So today I'm going to be going over an example of a DNA fingerprinting problem, but in the context of the show NCIS. On my made-up episode of NCIS, the special agents are investigating a crime and found DNA evidence at the crime scene. This DNA evidence is brought to their forensic scientist, Casey, who just replaced their past forensic scientist, Abby. Casey amplifies the DNA at 2 VNTR loci and runs the DNA for the 2 loci on different gels to create DNA fingerprints of the DNA from the scene, the victim, and the 4 suspects. VNTR stands for Variable Number Tandem Repeats, which is a location in a genome where nucleotides repeat over and over. The allele is based on the length of the DNA segment, and different alleles have different lengths because they have different numbers of the repeated DNA sequence. Casey uses this method of DNA fingerprinting to try to determine if any of the suspects' alleles match any of the alleles on the DNA found at the crime scene. Here's what the first gel looks like. Before Casey receives the DNA samples, Gibbs, who commands the team at NCIS, tells Casey that Suspect 4 is actually the father of Suspect 2. By looking at this gel, we can tell that this is true because Suspects 2 and 4 have one allele in common at this loci, which makes sense because offspring receive one allele from each parent. Now we can try to find a match to the DNA at the scene. We see this DNA has alleles at spot 1 and 3. The victim has alleles at spots 2 and 5, so the DNA does not belong to the victim. Suspect 1 has alleles at spots 1 and 3, but we can't make any conclusions yet, and need to see if any of the other suspects match the DNA at the scene just in case. Suspect 2 has alleles at spots 1 and 4, so we can rule them out. Suspect 3 has alleles at spot 2 and 5, so we can rule them out as well. Suspect 4 also matches the DNA at the scene with alleles at spots 1 and 3. Now we need to look at the other gel to see if we can narrow it down between suspects 1 and 4. Here's the gel for the second loci. We can see that suspects 2 and 4 also have one matching allele at this loci, which maintains that suspect 2 is the child of suspect 4. The DNA at the scene has alleles at spots 3 and 5. By using the same process we used with the first gel, we can see that suspects 1 and 3 match the DNA found at the scene. We had already ruled out the victim in suspects 2 and 3 on the previous gel, and even though suspect 3 matches the DNA from the scene on this gel, we need it to match at both loci to be sure it belongs to a suspect. Suspect 4 matched on the first gel but not on this one, so we can rule them out. That leaves suspect 1, since their DNA matches the DNA at the crime scene at 2 VNTR loci. This means that Casey, Gibbs, and the NCIS team can conclude that suspect 1 was at the scene of the crime.